back when I started, it wasn't even a completely formed discipline, if you want to call it that. The framework, what it does for me is to help me prioritize where our needs are and what we need to invest in.
Higher education is just so different to, the regular business that a lot of our other podcast guests have been involved in. There is, in every country through the last number of years, there's a lot of evidence that education has been underfunded.
A lot of our classes are online, and they're also recorded so that students that can only make a part of it, or if they're not in a place where they have to drive to, it allows a little bit more flexibility. But we also flex the other way and say, hey, students that want to come on campus, we have that as well. So we provide that true flexibility.
Hello and welcome to BetterTech. I'm your host, Colin McCarthy, here again to talk to you about tech. And today we're going to be talking about bridging the cyber talent gap, strategies for the future, with our guest, Fred Kwong, the VP and CISO of DeVry University. So thank you, Fred, for joining us today. Before we dive headfirst into cybersecurity, could you share a bit about your background, your journey in cybersecurity, and what led you to your current role?
Yeah, happy to. Thanks for having me on, Colin. I began my journey in cybersecurity probably 20 some years ago at this point. I grew up in IT as a whole, so I began my roles starting at the help desk and worked my way up through networking and system administration, finally finding a foothold into the security world, and I've been there ever since.
Right, and you must have a wealth of knowledge going through all of those stages, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners can also see themselves and think back to a lot of their history in growing up. I always like this question. I know this is off of our list of questions that we've thought about asking. When you look back at where you started and how we used to deal with security back in the day, what is the most shocking thing that we used to be done with how we treat cybersecurity now?
It's changed dramatically in the last few years. Since I started cybersecurity, and back when I started, it wasn't even a completely formed discipline, if you want to call it that. And with that, we used to just start, security used to just be antivirus and firewalls, right, for any organization. And, now it's a multi-billion-dollar industry with so many technologies and controls in place. And it's really matured, I think, as a discipline overall. And so when I think about that journey to where we kind of first started to where we're at today, the techniques and challenges have grown exponentially and continue to grow, and that's what makes cybersecurity kind of exciting as a career.
Right, yeah, certainly. When I look back on how we used to do IT when I first started working for a ISP help desk, we used to just telnet into the ISP's public IP address with a plain text username and password to get into their mainframe to look up everybody's billing information and resolve their problems. Nobody would use telnet for anything, but it used to be used for the public internet. It was quite scary when you look at where we've come and where we are now. So your role there involves enhancing the security posture of DeVry University using the risk management framework. Could you explain this framework and how it helps to translating technical risk into business opportunities?
Yeah, at a very high level, what we're trying to do is we're trying to control for the cyber risks that exist inside of the organization. And when I think about that, the framework, what it does for me is to help me prioritize where our needs are and what we need to invest in. So all the frameworks have what we call controls in place, and those controls help us to sort different attack vectors that are used against our organization. So whether it be business email compromise or ransomware, there are different controls that we have in place that help support us or help us protect against those types of attacks. And so when I look through my organization and my program, one of the first things I did is to do a risk assessment to kind of understand where we sit today. And from there, I was able to build the strategy to say, well, it looks like we have some areas where we have strong controls. We have other areas that need improvement. And then therefore, we build our strategy, our 3-year roadmap based off of where we see where that room for improvement needs to be and build additional controls in place.
Right, yeah, because higher education is just so different to the regular business that a lot of our other podcast guests have been involved in. What are some of the specific cybersecurity challenges that higher education institutions like DeVry University face, and how do you specifically address them?
Yeah, I want to say we have two main attack vectors that are unique to the university. The first one is going after, if you think about it from an enterprise perspective, going after the customer, but for us, it's going after the students, right? And in that sense, we have a lot of customers that have a lot of access to our organization that you normally wouldn't get with other enterprises, right? And so that puts us in kind of a unique situation where we have to share information with our customers. They have to be able to access our classes. They have to get to certain information inside university. And we do our best to protect our customers as well from that same perspective. And so that's a unique challenge in and of itself because we have so many identities that exist, both former and current customers, if you want to think of it that way, but former and current students, where we just have a lot of identities out there, and those identities can be compromised, right? Whether it's through DeVry or through other means, and we need to continue to kind of protect our students, even when they're no longer with the university or they're part of our alumni association, and it's a unique challenge. The second piece that I'll mention is the amount of attacks that we're seeing, and at least in my career, I have found that education seems to be under attack much more frequently than some of the other enterprises that I've worked at. And I think that's partially because, one, our data is rich, the data that we have. If you think about our students, most of them are younger in nature, right, from an age perspective. So they don't have a long history behind their identity. And I think that's much more valuable than, a old fuddy-duddy such as myself, which has a long history, which is, if you want to say, harder to fake in that sense. So students with less of a history, I think that data is worth a little bit more. And then the other piece is I believe education as a whole has been seen as a organization that is not as sophisticated as, let's just say, things like financial sector. And so because of that, I think the threat actors go after us quite a bit, and I'm definitely seeing it at the university level here.
Right, yes. There is, in every country through, the last number of years, there's a lot of evidence that education has been underfunded, and probably those threat actors do see or think of underfunding in education as, that there isn't as much focus on IT and the security that they have. For 6 years in the UK, I worked in higher education as a deputy network manager in a secondary school, a high school, and there was about 800 students. It was large for the UK, but small in the US standards. But it was very, very difficult securing that internal network because, you had 800 hackers on your network, always probing, seeing what they can do. You had to be very, very efficient in securing devices, turning off services, etc. You talked about the attack vector on identities. Have you also seen an increase in device compromises? Because it isn't going to be a one for one person having one identity. We all use multiple devices. I'm sure students use, various devices, whether they're signing into a personal device or a university school managed device.
Yeah, we don't worry too much about the device because we don't provide devices to our students. We're more on the BYOD side. But to your point, the students do log into labs and do have access to our devices on-prem. So we really track it more from an identity perspective. And so far, that has proven to be a challenge in and of itself, just because we do see all sorts of devices connected to our network, and some of those devices already have malicious payloads downloaded on them, and so that is a challenge in and of itself. And how do we ensure that we are protecting our campus assets at the same time as letting our students know, hey, your device may be compromised, and here are some steps that you may need to take to remediate that.
Right. Yeah, that must be very challenging because that malicious payload might not be put on there maliciously by a student trying to do something nefarious on the network, but their device has been compromised through other means. It's good that you have the ability to detect that and then have a process to notify the student so they can hopefully protect themselves.
Yeah, I'll tell you a fun story. At a previous university that I used to work at, we used to do scanning on behalf of the students, and I think my winner at the time had, at least according to the antivirus software, over 14,000 malicious pieces of files on their machine. So that I think that was the big winner that I had come across.
Yeah, that sounds that's a huge amount. So obviously you have spoken and presented at a number of national and international conferences on cyber risk management and the cyber talent gap. From your perspective, what are the most pressing issues in these areas today?
Well, one of the big challenges that we have inside of cybersecurity is just kind of a lack of diversity, right? I think that's a challenge just because when I think about women and disabled individuals, they're kind of underrepresented in our community, and we need to have more voices that help us to understand not only what our needs are going to be in the future, but because we do have that lack of talent that exists, and we need to be able to tap all the potential that exists out there, right? And so what we're trying to do here at the university, but then just personally as well, just try to, what do we need to do to kind of break down those barriers, right? And help these women and these disabled individuals get to a point where they can be properly represented in our organization. And it can be difficult because there's a lot of stereotypes that we're seeing, and that lack of representation makes it more painful or difficult for some of those folks to get into our field. And there's a lot of great programs out there that are helping with that today, which we're happy and proud to support, but it can be definitely a challenge.
Right. Yes. Yeah. It is. We all know traditionally IT and certainly IT leadership is a very male-dominated role. I know I have some very skilled, very knowledgeable female clients and contacts and colleagues in doing very well in the IT industry. When I have been hiring in the past, I've actually wanted to have more of a balanced, diverse team, and found it very, very difficult to find those candidates. You put up a job posting, you get 100 people apply, and only a handful of them, will be females. Or it is a challenge. What strategies do you believe are essential for helping to bridge this gap and develop the next generation of cybersecurity professionals?
I think it really starts at the university level, and that's part of the reason why I came to DeVry. I had worked in enterprise quite a bit beforehand, and like you mentioned, I've been to a lot of conferences. We've had a lot of chats about this, but there's only so much you can do at any specific enterprise itself, right? But so when it came to the opportunity to help build out the cyber curriculum here, along with the internal cyber program, I kind of jumped at that chance because I got tired of having conversations around the topic, but not really being able to do anything with it. And so that's why I'm really happy, like, here at the DeVry, we have things like the Women in Tech Scholar program, right? Which really focuses on how we can bring more of that minority voice into our field. And help to kind of bridge that. And I'm also seeing it at the lower levels as well. A lot of the STEM-focused programs really, open the doors for, younger kids, such as the ones that I have, where they're just being shown a different way or a different career path that they previously weren't shown. And I'm really proud that at least here in the U.S., we're doing things, not only at the university level, but also at the middle school and high school levels as well.
Mm-hmm. So over the years, are you seeing an increased trend in more applicants to those programs at your university?
Yeah, absolutely. Over 50% of the folks that are in our cyber program are of minority or female status, so it's fantastic from that perspective. And one of the other things that we're doing that's maybe a little bit not as traditional as some of our peers in the university space is because of the flexibility we provide from a course perspective. We allow our students a little bit more time if they need, or more flexibility if they're already working to obtain our degrees and our certifications. So I think that helps a lot as well. We had a lot of our students, have young kids, just as an example, right? And with that, work-life balance is not easy, especially when you have children, right? And so being able to afford them that flexibility gives our students kind of a leg up to succeed in these areas that they may not be able to do so otherwise.
Right. Yeah. So it's great to hear that there's an increased pipeline of skilled professionals, working through the training and will be ready in a couple of years to get into the workforce, because we all know that there's such a shortage of skilled cybersecurity and cyber-aware IT professionals. You talked about that flexibility. How has DeVry leveraged technology then to be flexible with accommodating people's hybrid schedules? Everybody is hybrid now. Everybody for the most part, has a flexible schedule. If you need to take 2 hours off in the afternoon to run an errand, you make up the time in the evening, and everybody seemed to be doing that. It sounds to me that your university has adopted a similar platform.
Absolutely. So a lot of our classes are online, and they're also recorded so that students that can only make a part of it, or if they're not in a place where they have to drive to, it allows a little bit more flexibility. But we also flex the other way and say, hey, students that want to come on campus, we have that as well. So we provide that true flexibility for our students, and it really helps them to accelerate through our program as well. So something where in the past, if you had to get a sitter for X amount of hours, we have that flexibility where our students can take courses when they need to take courses, right? So that's definitely helping to get more folks in the program and stay in the program, and that's the key, right? Is we want to see graduates, right? We want people coming out with those right skill sets, for sure.
Yeah, it's a very important thing. I know that actually getting the people to complete the courses, get fully certified, graduate, is the important final product in your production line of education. Talking about certification, and apart from your the university's own programs, what are your thoughts or recommendation for some of the other industry certification that's out there?
It's a little bit of it depends, only in the sense of it. As you know, cybersecurity is such a vast field, right? So it really depends on what job you're kind of going after, right? For a more general certification, I would say the CISO is, from ISC Squared, kind of the de facto general security certification that all folks need to have just to kind of get through that HR barrier. But then when you're talking about more specific fields, I would look at things like the OSCP for red team and or pen testing, right? I think that's a good certification to have. There's certifications from ISACA that are, more geared toward governance, risk, and compliance. There's the Certified Ethical Hacker, CEH. So there's a lot of certifications that kind of exist out there. And there's beginning certifications as well from such as like Security Plus to just kind of get your feet wet in terms of understanding some of the concepts around security, which are great if you're transitioning from either a more technical role into a security role, right? So moving a sysadmin over to becoming a security operations analyst, right? That's a good certification to give them those security fundamentals when they already have some of the potential technical chops that are needed.
Right. Yes. Yeah. There are, a lot of those courses available, and there's a lot of free resources as well from a lot of the providers to give people that initial understanding and entryway into the industry.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of like vendor specific courses, right, that exist out there. And to your point, Colin, a lot of them are free, right? Microsoft, Google, AWS, they all offer a lot of courseware out there and a lot of certifications that they're great to have, right? Because a lot of companies are using these technologies, and having more people that know that, it's fantastic from that perspective.
Yeah, certainly. So we've talked a little bit about your hybrid and remote on-demand way of doing education to make the courses available to fit into people's schedule. And we've all seen, remote technologies jump miles ahead in the last 3 or 4 years during COVID and the improvements in on-demand and video technology. What new innovations do you think are coming to the educational sector? And how do you see these enhancements shaping the future of education, not just for the university, but high school, middle school, and further down?
I'll bring up a couple different things. So very specifically at DeVry, we have technology that we call our care engine, and part of what that is it just provides the right nudges to our students at the right time, right?
Sure.
So, hey, did you turn in this coursework? Get a text around that, or class is coming up. Did you finish your homework on time? And just making sure that we're constantly engaging with our students, or if we see that students haven't attended classes lately, or again, hey, is there something that you need help with? Is there more flexibility? What can we do to help? And again, just making sure that our students are graduating. The worst thing that can happen to that student, the way I kind of look at it is, students that take courses, they're halfway there and they don't finish, right? That doesn't do anybody any good, right? It doesn't do them good, and it doesn't help DeVry either, right? And so, one of the first things that we kind of thought about was what can we do to help our students and engage with them and making sure they're making it all the way through.
Right.
The second thing I'll kind of mention is, and it's hard not to mention it at this point, right, is the the technology that we're seeing around artificial intelligence, right? Whether it's LLM models, visual AI, or basically AI as a whole. I think it is changing not only our field, but all the fields that kind of exist out there, right? Or all the industries. And right now, DeVry we're using it strategically in various places, but we're all still learning, right? It is something that is, it's not just that ML and AI hasn't been around for quite some time, because obviously it has, 10 plus years, but we're just seeing a lot more traction in startups and other organizations or technologies using, especially the natural language models, right? Bringing it into technologies, and how can we leverage that for our university? And that's something where we have a AI Center of Excellence. We form committees around, and to help us just get a better understanding of where else can we be using or leveraging this technology, not only in the classroom, but also in terms of back-end services.
Right, yeah, it is. As you're right, it has been around for a long time. It just did not magically appear a couple of years ago when OpenAI launched ChatGPT. It's been baked into a lot of Google Workspace for a long time. I spend a lot of time helping clients use Gemini for Workspace, and I know that it's a wonderful productivity enhancement. But I know that there's a lot of challenges within education for students using it to, bypass the learning aspect of being on a course and using, any one of the models to do their homework for them. But, students, cheating, shall we say, and not doing their coursework is not a new thing. 35 years ago, I copied an article out of an encyclopedia and, and wrote it all down and submitted it as my homework. But that had to go, I had to read it. It went through my brain, came out of my finger, and I wrote it down. So some of it did stick inside. With people just writing a prompt and outputting a document, they lose that. How are you doing anything to challenge that and I guess encourage users? No, users. I'm too used to using the term users. Students and your educators to use it as a in the right controlled manner, and not bypass their own learning, and really actually spending time on that sort of critical thought, sort of analysis that they all need to learn to become successful.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Colin. So we definitely embrace AI here at the organization, and we encourage our students to use it, but with the proper guardrails, right? And that's the key. And to me, this is not a challenge that education has been facing that's new, right? To your point, we had these same conversations when Wikipedia first started, as well, right? And that feels like 100 years ago at this point, but and we've learned from, I think, those challenges, and ML AI, we've been using that for quite some time to thwart things like plagiarism, right? Turnitin has been around for ages at this point, again, and that's just another piece of software that's doing pattern matching. Now it's not quite the same as obviously the LLMs, but that was a form of AI at the time, and it still is, right? And how do we encourage the use of AI, but also make students understand that education is really for them, and if they cheat on it, they're just really cheating themselves at the end of the day, to your point. And the important thing is to come up with knowledge and critical thinking skills that they can then use back out in the workplace.
Right, yeah. It's just like thinking about it now, any good company, any good IT manager, IT director, CISO is going to have an interview process where you're having a long conversation. You're asking, detailed questions of your candidate, scenario-based questions that they, won't have AI to turn to or a cheat sheet. It's just like users or applicants who have done a brain dump and memorized all the questions to the CCNA and then apply for a job and say, I've, got a CCNA, but then can't answer any questions about IP addressing because they don't know the subject. They've just, learned to pass the exam. So, Fred, I've loved chatting with you for the last half an hour. Looking ahead, what trends or innovations in cybersecurity, and of course we've mentioned AI as always gets mentioned, do you believe are going to be the most significant impact on security, specifically within the education sector?
I think the big challenges that we continue to have and will continue to have in the near future here is ransomware, not necessarily specific to education, but education sure sees a lot of it. And with the proliferation of AI, it's the combination of those two things combined, right? Gone are the days of your Nigerian prince sending you emails with bad form text, right? Now you have AI crafting much more sophisticated emails, just as an example, and allowing you potentially access into an organization. We see the use of deepfakes in audio as another way of getting access or information that they need to penetrate the organization as well. And again, another AI technology, right? So it's hard to talk about the future without talking about how and I hate the buzzword to some extent, but it is hard to talk about it without talking about how AI is affecting all these threat attacks that we're seeing, and they're just making them more sophisticated, faster, better. And so, from a defense perspective, we also need to leverage that same technology, right? It's a battle of the machines, if you call it, that is coming soon. And the last thing I'll kind of mention is quantum computing. In the near future, hopefully I'll be retired by then. But I'm at the same time, I do worry about encryption and the encryption standards that we have today being broken by quantum computing coming up, and that's not that far away at the end. Unfortunately, right? Even though I'd like it to be longer.
That is a brilliant nightmare to end the conversation with. I hadn't even considered that. We've all been thinking and that our long hexadecimal alphanumeric passwords that have been randomly generated are secure. But yes, thank you, Fred. With quantum computing, they could all be compromised a lot quicker with the current encryption standards. But let's hope, as we say, AI will be able to be leveraged and help overcome some of that. But it's been great to talk with you and hear how DeVry University has been leveraging technology. And most importantly, helping to make IT more of a diverse field. And I really do look forward to seeing all of those graduation numbers and talking to those graduates as they enter the workforce.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure, Colin.
Thank you.